So I am excited to introduce you guys to this panel. This is the future of marketing post-COVID. So what marketing is going to look like in this post-pandemic world we're living in. And I am excited to have Jennifer Cho here as the moderator. She is a PR agency superstar who comes from global agencies and recently launched her own entrepreneurial journey as well. So without further ado, we will kick this off. We have about 40 people in the room, and I will be on chat if anyone needs me, and you guys have a great session.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kendall. Thank you. So as Kendall said, I'm currently the owner and founder of Pivot and Swerve, a marketing comms consultancy. I definitely consider myself a lifelong marketer, so this topic is very important to me. I definitely started a non-traditional marketing path. I worked in the music industry, had my own label. I've launched brands such as Metro PCS through experiential marketing, and then also worked in the sports space for all of the sports leagues, understanding sponsorship analytics and marketing there. As Kendall mentioned, I was recently the general manager and executive vice president of the Southwest region of Weber Shandwick, IPG agency, so all about global marketing. And I'm super excited to be here and moderate this conversation today. So I will go around the room if everyone wants to introduce themselves and tell the group a little bit about your marketing. Lacey, if we can start with you, that would be awesome.
Sure. So welcome, everyone. I am Lacey McKinney. I am a Dallasite original, born and raised here. And so I kind of got my start early on working in fashion and PR. And so that's kind of my background. And as I was going through, I'm not the traditional marketer. I'm kind of one that kind of happened in and people started to ask me different questions. And so I started to, get into small business and work with those individuals. And so I started to help local businesses around with their marketing strategy. But I found that a lot of people started to ask me more about the creative side. And so I sit more on that side than into marketing and PR now. And so I'm just helping them with their design strategy, creative content, just kind of getting themselves out there. And so that's pretty much what I do. Outside of that, I have my own personal brand that I'm starting to develop as a thought leader and doing more into going in and doing facilitation for different organizations. So that's me kind of in a nutshell and more on the creative side than sitting heavy in marketing, even though that is a skill set that I hold.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lacey. Phil, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Excited to be here. Phil Lockhart, and Chief Digital Officer, Management Consulting Technology, an agency company called Credera. So my background is actually kind of came from the technology enablement. So a lot of focus in what are the different components that help make sure that all the grand ideas and the concepts and from a marketing perspective get put into place. How do you do that? How do you achieve that? So prior to the marketing background that I have right now, did technology development. So it kind of came from the technology area into building websites, managed e-commerce, so it's responsible for actual channels, delivering, putting together the activation of the marketing campaigns, and then now working with a lot of companies to make sure that they can come up with these very leaning forward different tactics and how to use technology to make sure that they take place. Everything from ad spend, making sure that the channels are performing correctly, and using the technology to ensure that personalization takes place.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Phil. Ramon, sounds like the group knows you a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm Ramon Mendez. Hey, everybody. Current startup is Brand Army. Previous one was Drive Ads, which was actually shelved due to the coronavirus. So I'm actually in the similar shoes of a lot of folks that are probably watching, hey, what should I do? What's going on? We're literally about to go into beta in less than 2 weeks. But in terms of the background, I've got a weird background, just was running health clubs as a kid, got into private wealth management about 23, 24, then joined a hedge fund so many years later, and then got into the startup space after a stint as a photographer. And so when you're really on your third startup or sort of in your own business, in effect, you're wearing a lot of hats. You're a sales guy, you're a marketing guy. In effect, you're all of the above. And so you've learned quite a bit of what you're going to need to do from a lean, sort of mindset all the way to if I actually do have budget, or if I do have staff, and what that might actually look like. So current startup is Brand Army. If anybody knows about OnlyFans, think of what we're bringing to the market as just like OnlyFans, but we're not touching anything adult oriented. We're focused on the most popular people of the world, the mainstream folks that would never put their name or brand on an OnlyFans. Or if you know Patreon, think of us as being like Patreon, but on turbo. So we really want to help influencers just literally with what will be in their hand with our app, the ability to monetize literally their life or what they do at any time. So that's really what we're up to. And today I'll probably just talk quite a bit about just from a lean entrepreneurial mindset. And that's kind of what I'll be talking about today.
Awesome. Thank you, Ramon. And last but not least, Michael.
Oh, maybe least. You never know. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Pratt, and I'm celebrating my 10th year in Dallas. I am not a Dallasite like Lacey, but it's been an interesting 10 years, I will say, in Dallas. I spent 20 years before that in New York City, where I was at Goldman Sachs. And my marketing journey kind of began there. I was a trader on the New York trading desk, and was given the group telecom, media, and entertainment. And inside of that group were the agencies. So I traded all the agencies for 10 years before I left to run a hedge fund in New York City. And I moved down here the year before we shut the hedge fund down after the crash of '08. It was a volatility fund, and there's no volatility after the crash, so it got boring. And I was handed the opportunity to run an agency and found one with a big project from a Goldman Sachs client. So here I was in Dallas in 2010 running a marketing agency, which I didn't want to do. But you dance with the girl you brought, as everybody knows. And so about 5 years later, we spun out a technology, which is my current company. It's called PanAmplify, and we automate report building for our agencies to send reports to their clients. And that's the space we're in now. So I can talk startup, I can talk marketing. We're privy with all of our customers to see thousands of clients and what they're doing in marketing right now. And it's been a very interesting wave of data over the last 6 months. So I can speak to what we're seeing there if anybody cares. And lastly, along the way, I founded a company which spun out an event that maybe some of you all are familiar with called Digital Fight Club. And it shouldn't be lost on anybody, the irony, but we started Digital Fight Club because we were sick of panels, which I'm now currently speaking on right now. And and they were boring to us, and we wanted to put experts on stage and have them metaphorically duke it out on hot button topics. And I can speak to that and what's changed. I'm actually doing a little bit of research during this event right here on what works and doesn't work in the virtual space. So I can talk about that. Super happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you and welcome everyone. I know the panel is all about the future of marketing, but I think it needs to be said that we are living in a crazy environment right now. So I'd like to start with like a kind of a current setup a little bit. So compared to the same time last year, how has this pandemic altered or changed any of your marketing efforts, the work that you're doing, from budgets? Is there anything that you describe as the future that has completely disappeared or has emerged as a new option? So let's talk a little bit about what we're doing right now. And Michael, if you're okay with it, I mean, you just talked about the live event experience and how you've had to pivot pretty aggressively. Do you want to talk to us a little bit how Digital Fight Club has changed?
Sure. So, well, it stopped for starters, and we're in limbo right now. But the last Digital Fight Club we had was February 28th. 2 weeks before we shut down. And ironically, it was a very specific, our first topic only Digital Fight Club. It wasn't on broad technology, it was on marketing. And the audience was filled with CMOs and their staffs, agency CEOs and their staffs, and the fighters were agency executives and the referees were brand CMOs. And it was ecstatic and crazy. And people were saying stuff that you probably would never say in a pitch. That was interesting. But the problem is that event is really full of energy, like massive amounts of energy. And I liken it to this, and I'm curious about everybody else's perspective. When I've been thinking about this analogy, I didn't come up with it. When live stage was met with the introduction of the movie camera, everybody thought that live theater would go away, but they thought that the people would just film live theater, like you put a camera and film live theater. But aside from Hamilton, you almost never see live theater just stuck with a camera and people filming it, right? Movies became nonlinear storytelling, and it became something much different than live theater. In that sense, I don't want to just put virtual and film digital Fight Club, if you will. I think it'll be completely lost. So we're not sure how we reinvent the experience instead of just filming something that was once on stage. You know what I mean? And that's really where we're at right now, trying to figure that out.
Hey, it's all a process, right? And the learning comes in the journey. So speaking of industries that have come to a halt, Lacey, so tourism and entertainment dollars, that also kind of around the same time came to a halt and is still struggling. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of how you're adapting to the new environment?
Yeah, so I've worked with Oak Cliff Chamber. And so thinking about big events, we usually do an annual Taste of Oak Cliff. And so this brings around different people coming in from around it. People travel in, to come to this event. And so basically, like, Michael kind of said, it's we stopped. We didn't do anything. So we're trying to figure out how to reinvent that event, because it's all about pushing forward the restaurant industry around Dallas, and getting people involved in that. And so trying to figure out, how do you go in and redo this, this event and still make it more, where they're trying to taste the food. They're trying to, come together and do entertainment. We would have people performing there. You're trying to, figure all that out. And so you, like you said, you don't want to be on a screen and, and being entertained. You can't go in person and, interact anymore. So you're trying to figure out, what does that look like? And I think, sadly enough, I don't think a lot of people have the answers. We're trying to figure those out. And so, we're going through and looking at some strategies to figure out what that looks like. Is that a live cooking, show that you start to, develop and entertain and be able to do that? If you think about a lot of the theaters, the movie theaters are just now, opening back up. So being able to come in person and entertain is just not something, that's happening. And so a lot of large events have, put a halt in. A lot of times you're just kind of in a waiting pattern. A lot of people are starting to go back to kind of their core services and starting to do more around empathy and support and just talking with, their individuals and their clientele and stuff. And it's like, do you do events that are more, focused on being empathetic in the time that we're sitting in, so it's just kind of open, and I think people are still trying to develop what that looks like.
Right. Especially since there are no kind of finite answers right now.
Exactly.
So we're kind of going with the flow, right?
Yeah.
So Phil, Credera is a consulting agency. Can you talk to us a little bit about how your clients' needs have changed, any kind of new work that you had to kind of change and turn around?
Yeah, absolutely. So just kind of a little background. So, we work with companies, everything from startups to Fortune 100 companies, and across all the different industries. I think one of the biggest things to start with is the fact that industries were impacted differently, depending on like what their products and services were. For instance, when, we have telecom companies which are actually doing quite well in this situation. So that would be an example of a company that was increasing, ad spend. But the majority of the rest of the industries we worked with, the biggest thing was just ad spend cuts. Depending on the markets, everything from pharmaceuticals to retail to restaurants and airlines. Some of those just paused incredibly on that. Within one industry, they would do, for instance, I have a very large client that does $1 billion in advertisement spend, and they cut 60%, with that. So the industry in general had huge cuts. It was a pause, but what do we do with this? And let's try to figure out what is the next step on, to look at this. So it really required people to immediately take a focus and say, what's working, what's not working? Because actually just completely shutting down and pausing is going to make the climb even harder once, everything does rebound. So it was a perspective of, let's make sure we get some foundational elements. Let's actually invest a little bit more in the measurement side so we can look to see what is working, and then a little bit of a slow climb within specific things that are proven. Like these are working. Huge elements of just listening to the customers and making sure that it's not their business as usual and how we're messaging to them. Their needs, their attitudes and behaviors have changed. Let's make sure we're focusing on that, as well as a high focus on loyalty. The customers that have been loyal to us, let's make sure that we have a high focus on making sure that we are listening to them, understanding them, personalizing messages to them, because the acquisition piece was going to be a huge challenge at this time, just because in general, across you look in June in particular, there was only 2 different categories that if you ask the customer, and this is like what, not what I want to happen as a company, but what is the customer intent from a purchasing perspective? There were only 2 categories that had increased intent, which were 2 of them you would probably understand, okay, that makes sense. Groceries and anything related to home entertainment and home improvement, because you're spending the time on that. So understanding those pieces, listening and making sure that you're putting that focus were some of the big things that we noticed.
Sure, no, that totally makes sense. I'll add Amazon, our new extra billionaire list during the pandemic. But just talk behemoth of Amazon, kind of startup culture. Ramon, I mean, I would consider you a serial entrepreneur, and sometimes ideas need funding. Can you talk to us or give advice to the group about having a great idea, kind of maybe like your rideshare idea, and how you've had to kind of pivot your business strategy in order to fund it, support it, and then change audiences?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I go back to my original startup, I didn't know anybody in the space. I didn't know anything. I had to literally figure out, okay, cool. How am I going to corral all these different people? I'm going to need a developer. I'm going to need a designer. All of these things, right? So I would go to these events, and I might see somebody that looked important, because back then they would wear badges. And what I would do is I would literally just quickly look at the badge, and I would Google who they are, read up a couple of things, and then introduce myself after I would do that. Anyway, I don't know if you guys know Sung Kim. Sung Kim is a really talented designer in the top 50 in the world. Anyway, he was at an event, and literally in principle, in less than an hour of meeting this guy cold, I got him to agree to design for equity, actually, the design end to end of my first startup. Just literally, here's the idea, here's what's going on, and literally pitched it, sold it literally in less than an hour. So boom, I've got that out of the way. But in a sort of a lean mindset. Then I of course had to do the same thing also then for the developer. Lean mindset, go to an event, saw some guy, literally Googled the guy, and that actually ended up turning out to be my developer. I talked with him, made it happen as well. So basically coming at people in ways where, hey, I've got this idea, and I think from the previous session, I don't know if you guys were in it, but they talk about your personality and who you are and what you're about. And at the end of the day, they're really buying into you. They're very much buying into you. How enthusiastic are you about your product? How enthusiastic are you about the industry, and how much knowledge you actually have? But at the end of the day, do they believe that you can actually drive this and actually take it home? So I think if you are truly an expert and you're truly passionate, I think you can get a lot of people involved. But for me, early on my first startup, it was very much about just sort of cobblestoning together the different persona types that I was going to need to build this thing, if you will. Now, a lot of hard lessons learned along the way when you've got no background. Now being on my third one, I've got 12 full-time developers. I've got a great CTO and my fellow co-founder. And so we've learned quite a bit, but we're also staying very, very, very lean. We actually went to 99 Designs, if you guys know 99 Designs, and have this gorgeous, beautiful app designed out for just a little fraction of what you would spend on a normal UI UX person, probably a fifth of the cost, which has been amazing. But anyway, the point is we've learned a lot of ways of how we can be lean to get this stuff stood up. And I'm getting into a business where it's all about an influencer bringing over their army, their fan base to directly monetize, right? So how do I get to these influencers? If I'm going to stay lean and, especially in this world, I'm just going to leverage my network. So the quality of my network has been amazing thus far. Typically, everybody I've spoken with is 1 or 2 people away from very famous people, athletes, celebrities, from Tiger Woods to Will Smith to Jerry King, top 100 golf instructors in the world, to a Netflix comedian that will be likely joining our platform before we launch. So it's interesting what a strong network can do, but also more importantly, keeping things incredibly lean. I'm not paying for any of this stuff. It's just purely, we're all friends. We want to help each other out. Obviously, I feel I'm great at pitching the concept. They love my enthusiasm, and now they're willing to back it and help. So those are just some little tidbits that work for me.
No, I think that's super smart. And I love the story about kind of the value of networking and really just asking people conversations about where you need help. So I know probably a number of different entrepreneurs are on this call looking for advice. I see a question in the chat about just recommendations for more effective advertising, like dollar investment. I think, leveraging some contacts is in your network is definitely one it is for the group. Do any of you have any other advice in a cost-conscious environment, some ways where you thought lean and were able to get great results?
I mean, I'll chime in. I forgot to answer your full one. So what I had done on my last startup, which was Drive Ads, by the way, we had created technology that would go on a moving truck to provide audience measurement on a granular basis of how many people literally were around it. So an immediate understanding of audience measurement, which had not been done before like that. So anyway, back then I didn't have a car. I would just be, taking Uber literally everywhere. And I just got this crazy idea. Hey, why don't I turn these Uber guys into my marketers, into my sales guys? And so I literally I pitched it, it worked. And then I had multiple Uber and Lyft drivers literally out there sending me business cards and sending the photos of the cards. And it was crazy. Anyway, one of them happened to be, and it was a Lyft driver. He told me the story. And frankly, I didn't believe him, right? Do sales a lot, like whatever. But he was saying that they were literally just like, here, we need this guy's information. Here's our business card. And he said they were all drunk. Here's our business, whatever. Really weird story. Anyway, turns out these were all executives for a company called Omnitrax, which is a Vista Equity portfolio company. Robert Smith is a hero of mine. But Omnitrax is in they've got about an 80% market share of the entire trucking industry's telematics space. They happen to be here in Dallas. I'd never heard of them. Still early on the Drive Ad space. But anyway, that crazy idea of having these people out there sort of marketing for me that, again, I'm not going to pay for unless actually something comes to fruition, turned into an inked partnership with Omnitrax, which then led to a lot of media. That one relationship gave me a ton of entree to a lot of different organizations I otherwise would not have had for all these trucking groups. I literally became a channel partner like that with this group, where all of these channel partners were now going to be selling the Drive Ads program to all of their fleet customers to turn their fleet from a cost center to a profit center. So anyway, just something that if anybody has the wherewithal, talk to some Uber and Lyft drivers and literally have these guys pitch your stuff, get them involved. They're there to make extra money. They've got a captivated audience in the back seat. Turn all that stuff into extra money for them with you, and it's a win-win.
Makes sense.
Yep. And to that point, just want to kind of mention, I know Ramon is speaking more on a, larger basis of collaboration, but I think that's very key when people are thinking like, how do I, kind of still get myself out there, get my products out there. Collaborations, you're getting with and getting in front of other people's audiences by just collaborating and offering, your skill set, being a thought leader or something like that. So I think that's a perfect way to think lean, to say that you don't have to be, out there spending a lot of money when you can just say, hey, I have this. I think your audience may need it. Let me get in front of them. Let me talk about X, and we can work together and promote it. And I think you're seeing it more so now, but I think a lot of people weren't going that route, but they're starting to go into, doing more of the collaboration and cross brand, promotions. And I think that's a great way to kind of think lean and not be so, focused on what you're doing only individually.
Right. No, I think that's a great point. It's all about broadening your audience. Mm-hmm. If we talk about brand army, like Ramon, it's all about having an army of advocates for yourself, and you just kind of need to tap into your network and communicate clearly and create alignment. So making sure that, like you mentioned, like your audiences and your goals are similar, then you might as well work together. Mm-hmm. I'll be honest, that's the lean mentality is something that I had to kind of think about. I know we're kind of bridging the current and the future, but I was at a big agency, lean to how do we pivot a client budget that has, an experiential activation so that we don't lose that money and we kind of figure out a new solution that would make sense for the client. So collaboration was a big one. Pivoting live into social and digital was another one. And then I think something else that came out of the pandemic is really just re-elevating the importance of clear communication, because in order to do everything that you guys are both talking about, you need to make sure that you have your value prop, and like you're telling your network and your partners like why you should work together and clearly communicating that so that you're getting that alignment that everyone is looking for.
Sure.
I think we lost a panelist.
We lost Phil.
Oh, okay.
Lost power to a storm. Oh, wow.
Real
Okay,
dramatic,
cool.
guys. It's awesome. I'm kidding.
Thanks for the update, Kendall. Just to continue on lean, and y'all feel free to jump in at any time. And I also think that because of the uncertainty of the next few months, and honestly, maybe, although I don't want to put that into the universe, I think lean is the mentality. I also think that that's why consultancies are gaining some larger clients. There's a number of different people that have gone out. I mean, our massive client budgets were still cut. And I mean, I feel like I have a consultant network that's thriving. I feel like companies are looking to execute their strategies. I think leaner teams kind of tend to pivot faster. They're able to be a little more nimble than some of the larger agencies. So one of my predictions is that leaner, kind of medium-sized and smaller agencies will probably get a lot of work. I mean, I'm just going to throw that out there. Do y'all agree with that? Is that something that you're seeing? Michael, I know you come from the big agency world, and I agree with you. Being the boss is not a rewarding job.
Well, so here's some stuff. I love throwing this stat out there. There's 121,000 marketing agencies in the United States. That number does not include individual sole proprietor, hang a shingle type people. Okay. Those are actual agencies. Now, 500 of them are considered, I only have to know this because our customers are agencies. So on my investment deck, we raised a couple $1 million. You got to show total addressable market and all that good stuff. And their investors are like, how many customers can there be? And so people think that number is bizarrely high, because if you run an agency and someone just tells you there's 121,000 of them out there, you're like, dang it. That's a lot of competition for that next pitch, right? Lacey's sitting there going, I feel that. 500 are considered large. So Richard's Group here in town, for example, Weber, is in that category. 11,000 are medium and 110,000 are boutique. Okay. And it's not just number of clients. It's not just bookings. It's not just number of employees. It's this weird combination. For example, Richard's has almost 1,000 employees and they have $1 billion book, but they only have 40 clients. Scorpion, which is in LA and in Addison, has also 1,000, almost $1 billion book as well, and they have 11,000 clients. They deal with the franchise space. So those two agencies could not be more different, right? And you mentioned launching Metro PCS, and Richards has Metro PCS, for example, and they probably have 200 people on that account. So anyway, every agency is different on how you look at it. I think the top end has let a lot of people go because they tend to be fat, dumb, and happy agencies. They're expensive. They have too many people, and they've cut a lot. Whereas the low end, I haven't seen a lot of cutting. In fact, I've seen hiring. Maybe it's because they're getting the business you spoke of. And if you're lean and you get more business, you could be strapped, right? You may need to hire an extra person kind of thing. So that's what we're seeing. Last thing I'll throw out, since we sell to agencies, we saw an interesting COVID effect. We applied for, and we're a startup still. We've only been around for maybe 5 years. And we applied for a PPP loan and we got it. And we lost the exact number of customers that equaled the revenue from the PPP loan. So God bless, we were so lucky that it all matched up perfectly. 20% of our customers went out of business. They were agencies that focused solely on hospitality, travel, and tourism marketing. And I had CEOs call me up saying, I lost every client. I had to fire everybody. But I am seeing, we just started running the August report run for marketing, for advertising. And it looks like ad spends have crawled back from, they were non-existent in May and April, and they started creeping around in June and July, and August looks pretty strong. So I don't know what we do with that. Now, I'm not seeing any hospitality advertising because I lost all those customers. So
yeah, I think that's probably the one category that it's going to take a little longer to recover.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I've been seeing the same kind of spike in advertising. Your data is so strong. Thank you for giving me that education on the number of agencies. That's good to know. But yeah, I mean, everything you're saying matches kind of what I've been seeing in market as well. So I think that's really interesting. I know everybody for advice. People are loving the direct advice, Ramon, that you were giving about the Uber and Lyft drivers. Love that as well. For the group, is there any other advice that you would give to like a startup to incorporate into their marketing mix, you know, just to kind of take advantage of the moment? Like Michael mentioned, people are more open nowadays, you know, they're starting to try to get back to normal. So is there any advice that you would give any of these aspiring entrepreneurs on the call?
The advice I would probably give would be about just the typical funnel stuff, right? You want a marketing and a sales funnel. And if there's one thing I learned in sales a long time ago, if I knock on your door, you're in a position of power. But if you knock on my door, it's flipped. And so anytime you can creatively work on people coming to you, you're just at a little bit more of an advantage, and it should just be a little bit easier for you to get whatever deal ultimately closed or done, which is nice. So anyway, then that leads to, okay, what would a funnel, potentially look like with a lean, a lot of the stuff from some of the other panelists, there's a lot of budgets. Anytime I hear, like you mentioned, experiential, I'm thinking, holy shit, the way that's trickled down and they've still got good budget, that must be some big org to be able to even afford that experiential ad spend or whatever it might look like. But if you're just like a one or a twosie type of organization and you're trying to get going, what are some simple funnels that you could create? I think one of the simplest one would be a Facebook group for your category, a place where you can literally have people that are involved or like whatever industry or category you might be in. It's a dead simple way for free that you can set it up, get all of these random people to come in, listen to what they're saying, and now you've got a captivated audience to, again, work on ultimately as a funnel when you're ready with your offering or whatever it might look like. It's free, it's dead simple, but it also might be able to go if your group is fun and interesting. It could really actually help you actually find quite a few customers within that area. Another one that would also work well, especially during this environment, is a simple meetup group, right? Meetups, as we know, are typically in more of a, you go physically, go hang out somewhere. Now the meetups are obviously going to be virtual. So if I was an entrepreneur with a lean mindset, I would very much be interested in getting ahead of these virtual meetups and seeing what that would look like, but also, again, creating meetups in my own category, period. I need to create in my own category. I want people to come to me, not just because I want them to come to me. I want them to come to me because I want to pitch. I want to constantly pitch. I want to literally ad nauseum be pitching to everybody, not just including anybody I might run into, but literally people like this where they'll be able to come in and we'll be able to talk about whatever with like-minded people. And over time, you're going to get better and better and better at it. But again, it's just another funnel. The monthly event, the meetup group, things like that, again, where you're staying very lean, they're very easy to do, guys. But anytime you can have people knocking on your door, you're at a huge advantage, period. Don't do that otherwise, and you're literally just going to make it that much harder, in my opinion, on everything. Just a simple little advice.
No, I love that advice, and I'm living and learning that myself. I also appreciate that you mentioned a number of different ways to get people in your funnel cost, because I think it's important to recognize that people are struggling right now. So I really appreciate that. I mean, I'm currently working, my largest client right now is the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. So they have an annual legislative conference that is their once a year event. It is their biggest fundraiser and they're a nonprofit. So how do you take that and how do you get people to kind of go through your funnel and attend in a way that is not disrespectful of the current economic environment, right? In the past, people had to go there in person. You had to pay tickets in order to attend. Signature event programming needed more attendance. So one of the big pivots that we had to do this year was to rethink our funnel. So we were able to create registration for free. So we weren't charging anybody and attend. And we had to be super smart about how we engaged our sponsors to make up for that money. How do we figure out ways that people would donate? And it's been really interesting because as soon as we launched, I mean, people appreciated that registration was for free. You know, people wanted to attend to learn at this time more than ever. They wanted to kind of share the experience, but they appreciated that we weren't charging them, you know, $100 or whatever to attend the event. So what we've seen is a huge spike in individual contributions. So I think, you know, just thinking about the funnel in a different way, like, hey, we're going to give you value. We are empathetic to your situation, and we're going to still deliver what we always deliver. And creating that different experience, people have shown appreciation in a different way. So I appreciate that you're bringing people in a way that's palatable to them. So yes, I agree with Giselle. Hi, Giselle, Metro PCS throwback. Agree that Facebook groups and meetups are great suggestions for people meeting virtually. Is there anything else that you guys would give advice about on kind of getting people into your funnel in a different way?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the chat box here, and they're kind of asking questions about, you know, webinars versus virtual events, Facebook versus Instagram, paid or organic. And to me, I think it's yes and. You know, you're trying all of those because you have the ability now to have some time to try to go in and do that. So you basically find out where your clients are hanging out. So are they hanging out more on Facebook, or are they on Instagram? Or they might be, you know, more hanging out on LinkedIn. So you kind of go where they are, you know, kind of going. And so that's the person that has a touch point into what their customers are doing, what their clientele is asking about. And most of the times it's as simple as posting something on those social sites just to ask them, you know, questions, get inquisitive. And where you see the response at, that's where, you know, you need to hang out. So I wouldn't choose one or the other. I would try a little bit of both. To me, if you're looking at webinars versus virtual events, I think virtual events are more engaging. So any way that somebody can talk to you, ask questions, get feedback, those type of things is the way, you know, the way I would kind of go. As far as paid versus organic ads, I mean, there's a lot going on in the space. You know, the online space is so noisy now. And so doing, you know, going live or doing some, you know, some posts, some more engaging things, I would probably go that route more so than paid. I think people are still doing, you know, paid ads on Facebook, Instagram, but I would try to do the organic stuff first and see what works before I go into just automatically paying, so you can save those dollars and put them where they need to go. That's just kind of my suggestion.
No, that totally makes sense. And you touched on some of the questions that we're seeing come up in the chat. I think people, you know, when you talked about like, hey, like definitely organic owned kind of channels. Do you guys have any advice or recommendations for solopreneurs? Like Facebook versus Instagram, you know, like webinar versus a virtual event, you know, does anyone have any advice there?
Well, you want me to take it a level above that and say some things that might be seem controversial?
Let's.
The first thing is I got to put this into context. I'm throwing out, for no offense, the people that have businesses that sell that are have clients, right? Versus businesses that have products. Because client service companies are extraordinarily different than product companies. Okay, I'm a product company. Ramon's a product company, but I believe Lacey's a client company, right? And Phil's a client company. And so I'm talking to the product folks. If you don't have product market fit and you're spending $1 on advertising, if I was your investor, I'd fire you. That's for starter, because if you don't have product market fit, what the hell are you advertising for? And who are you advertising to? For what purpose? So let's presume you have product market fit. If you have product market fit and you've gone through the excruciating, from experience, and I can see Ramon nod too, because achieving product market fit for your startup is really, really, really hard. But once you get it, yay, you're there. That process will teach you so much about who your customer is, how they come to learn about your product, how they acquire your product, and all of that, so much that you'll have a real good head start where to put $1, right? You won't have to experiment near as much, and it'll be a really good place to seed some of your efforts. That would be the advice I get. I bet you half the people listening to this don't have product market fit yet. And if they're asking, where do I advertise? They're like wasting money. Those are my 2 cents.
I think that totally makes sense. With your setup, I was worried it would be more controversial. So
I can be more controversial if you need that.
I was like, ooh, but that totally makes sense. It's a waste of money. So I get that. We're getting some questions about kind of, I guess, membership marketing tips. Ruben says, we sell office as a service, almost like a gym membership for your business. Do you have any advice to someone that's selling memberships?
So you're selling.
That's a tough one, right?
Oh, office as a service. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can start. I mean, I'm also the president-elect of PRSA Dallas. So we are a trade association and we sell memberships. We also, charge people to go to live events, which we've had to pivot to webinars and master classes and other things. But, the biggest tip on membership is maybe not just sending like a renewal note, right? Like really showing the value and kind of letting our members know like, hey, like we know you're struggling. This is a human piece. So our membership team has added a lot of high touch kind of calls, emails, just to check in on people. So we understand the stories of the people and the experience. We've also done another survey about the challenges that people are like, is your company not paying for your membership anymore? Should we go to national and ask for more discounts on membership? It's really all about just understanding the human experience and making high touch points. And then lastly, show the value in this current environment. So a number of our colleagues in communications have lost their jobs. So really just highlighting our networking opportunities, our job board, sharing those opportunities proactively with those who have identified that they're looking. So really just being a human being in this time has helped us maintain the membership that we needed. So I hope that's helpful. Anyone else?
I would add, Ruben, is that as somebody who sold a prolific number of memberships, I started in the health club business at 17. I was the youngest GM at Valley Total Fitness at the age of 19. I sold a lot of memberships. What I would suggest, so one of the basic things I learned as a kid at 17 years old, as soon as somebody signs up, I'm going to literally put a paper right in front of them as soon as they're done signing up. And I'm going to have them write down their first 5 to 10 friends that they want me to call to enjoy the benefits of health and fitness. That's one of the basic things that you would do. So one of the things I might suggest is go to your current base and figure out, how did you find us? How long did it take for you to find us? What did you think of the experience? How could I have improved upon all of that? What did you think about the price point? What other challenges did you see before you ultimately, signed on the dotted line? But I want to understand on a super granular, basis, who are these people that I've got? And then from there, I want to ask them to help me find other people. If I've got this great place, the air conditioner's working, the bathrooms are clean, the toilet paper's already there, I think it's okay to ask, obviously, them to ultimately help. But when you get into something like that, it can almost be like Michael was saying, it can almost be a needle in a haystack if you're going to try to advertise. It's very, very, very difficult. If you don't have specific funnels set up that look like somebody that would ultimately join, right? One of the other things, too, with a health club membership that's probably applicable in your world is that proximity is huge. If it's not convenient, they're not going to consistently be able to use it. So there's a lot of interesting factors. As somebody who literally as a kid at 17 went through an IBM corporate sales training class, they had a very interesting way of training me back then, which was awesome. After that, I would literally get dropped off in a neighborhood, go sell. At 17, you don't know anything. I was like, okay. And I just did whatever they wanted me to do. That's another thing that I would do. But again, I have no boundaries. I've got no filter. I'm happy to go walk into a neighborhood and literally knock on doors, meet people. Hey, I'm here. You know of anybody that would benefit? Like, just where you're going to get on this, again, granular basis of people in the area, even if you need to leave flyers, whatever it might look like, figure out what that funnel will be and ultimately speak to them in the best way you can. But I would start first with your current membership, understand who these members are, how they got there, ask them for some referrals, and then go through there. And then I would also have a consistent open house, probably one day a week or every other week. We've got some cookies and whatever, and anybody can come through, whether it's somebody for events, especially events. There's a lot of good stuff for the event stuff. And by the way, I've got a stake in a company that does thousands of them as well, but that's another story. But anyway, so there's a lot of things that you could do with it that would actually, I think, be a lot of fun and easy and frankly not very expensive at all.
Yeah, no, I'm all a fan of that old school marketing.
Yeah,
I definitely agree with the chats that are happening.
That storm.
Bill, welcome back.
When
Nice
the
to
power
see
went
you.
out, I was like, you got to be kidding me. And watching a router reboot, and I had no idea, how long it actually takes. So it's like, holy cow, and refresh. So good to do that. But on that same topic,
Yeah.
I think one of the big things is what you're trying to do is leverage your success, right? Understand what's working. And the biggest thing, it doesn't have to cost money. Speak to your customers and ask them lots of questions and find lots of opportunities to listen, specifically about the experience. A lot of the times you'd be amazed on what they see as value versus what you're selling as value. Highlight that. A focus group with people, I mean, even with like 5 people, when you're adding a new feature or anything like that, will give you a lot of just insights on like, is this going to fly? Do this early. Don't spend all the money trying to build something, put it out and see how people will respond to it. Walk through, like sit them down and say, here's the objective on like what I want you to do, and have them go through the steps. Because if the product itself isn't going to be working, it doesn't matter how much you're going to be spending on the marketing. Or if you think they're going to enter through, a specific point, or you optimize everything towards that, like everyone thinks people land on their homepage. That's the starting point. 20% of people's traffic actually hits the homepage because they've got marketing efforts and they've got SEO that's leading to it. So you might be putting all your effort on a spot that, a small percentage of your company is actually going through. Ask your customers. Do lookalike modeling off of that. Who are they? All the different attributes, of that. So then you can start engaging. Because if you look to the channels on just to find your customer, you're going to spend a ton of money. The internet is a place where they'll take your money as much as you want to give it, and it's hard to actually then refine that into it. Like, you actually need to have a very targeted view of who I'm after, why I'm after, and that entire journey that you look to bring them on. And your existing customers are the best lead into that. Because if you're going to just spend, small budgets aren't even enough to get you into like the real playing field with statistical data. So it's like, well, I'm just going to do small amounts of money. There's a certain amount of dollars that are required to get into it. So as Michael was saying, if you're just out there spending money, you'll blow through it very quickly, and it needs to be very targeted.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Just being efficient and being smart about spend is critical. And I definitely agree on the listening to your clients, right? Like, everything is changing, needs are changing so quickly. Without listening and just moving forward, I think there's a lot more danger ahead. So I appreciate that. With less than half an hour to go, let's talk a little bit about marketing around this elephant in the room. So we are living in a very polarized environment. So in addition to the pandemic, 2020 has brought a social justice revolution and a highly divisive political campaign. With audiences being so polarized, how has that affected your marketing efforts? How do you, be inclusive but not alienate? And then alternately, have you seen being vocal about beliefs and company values is more important than ever? I am struggling with this because I represent, my largest client is the foundation, and technically we're nonpartisan. We represent all members of Congress. So in all of our marketing efforts, we have to be super careful to make sure that we are not in violation of any ethics. We have to keep our personal thoughts out of it. We need to make sure that when we're sharing information from our members, that it is politicized. And we need to be super careful about that. So this has been a layer of my marketing and communications efforts that I've had to pay so much more attention to and be so intentional about really looking on the other side. Can y'all share some of your experiences with the polarization?
I guess I can take that one first. Just thinking about it. Yes, when you are, whether you're a customer, product based, whatever you, whoever you're marketing to and whatever you are marketing, to me, kind of sticking into politics and, choosing one side over the other, I would say stay away from that. But what I would do is say you can still speak to what is going on when you're choosing human rights. And, that's been the biggest thing that we've been, kind of looking at and fighting for all along, is that this, what's going on is more so the human rights and what's right and and playing into the empathy side of it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so I think that's what I, would tell clients going forward is that you can share your thoughts and everything else, but speak to more on the empathetic side than more on the politics and what side you're choosing versus, what has been said, through the different debates and everything. That's kind of what I would, kind of suggest. Speak to human rights. If you're speaking to human rights, that's the biggest thing. I would say to those that are the individuals that choose not to say anything, sometimes that can come off wrong because silence is golden, and it's almost as if you are agreeing with some of the stuff instead of kind of speaking your mind. And even if you're just saying, hey, you know what, this is hard. I don't know what's going on. I don't know, direction to go in. I think that's saying more than you not saying anything, because that's almost choosing, to go in the wrong direction. So I would say, yes, speak out, say something, but make sure you're speaking from your heart, more so than choosing sides on politics.
Definitely. No, I agree with you on everything you said. And I think more than ever, the expectation is that companies and, brands are speaking up, even if it is, just speaking from the heart. There's a ton of conversation around shareholder versus stakeholder, relations and values. So I agree that I'm getting a lot of comments here.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely agree that silence is no longer an option.
Like to add in there is that themes that have been very important specifically during this time is just purpose and trust. So it's a big deal when you speak about these topics, and they should be treated that way. So there's extra time that needs to be applied. The words matter even more than the typical messages that go out, because small words make a big difference. And just because there might be a good intent, the way that that's interpreted specifically to your customers, you need to understand what your customers, what's important to them, like what they want to see. Like I would say, just make sure whatever it is genuine, because people can see through that. And then also that you're able to deliver on your communication and represent that versus just saying stuff. So I would say, careful and pay a lot of attention to the words, because they really matter, and then make sure that you're actually illustrating and living up to the messages that you're representing, because people want to see that.
Yep. No, I completely agree with you, Phil. I think, we've seen a lot of companies come out with statements, and a lot of my work is helping to make sure that your external statements are matched by your internal work, values, and, the things that you're actually doing. Because if there's a disconnect between your external and internal, that is hugely problematic, right? So I love that you brought up, that trust, that authenticity, I think is really critical. And I think people nowadays are smart and they can figure out whether it matches or not. So thank you for that. Ramon, Michael, any advice here for the group?
What I would say is, so I'll use Brand Army, right? We're a couple of weeks out from going into beta, maybe a little bit quicker than that. I have zero interest in getting into any of those topics. They're a little bit too polarizing. They're going to be a little bit too off-putting. They don't bring any real value to where I'm at. More importantly, right, I've got a full staff that I'm looking after, and in effect, their livelihoods. I'm not interested in affecting all of these folks' livelihoods. I need to stay in my lane. I don't have the time to litigate and do a lot of this stuff that a lot of people might want to get into. It's not our place. I'm simply creating tech to help influencers extract maximum value from their best fans, right? And that's it. I don't even know if something like that would ever even make sense. So for us, I think we need to stay more agnostic. We need to stay in our lane, especially when you're this young. I mean, something like that could just destroy us quickly. If I say the wrong thing, bring on the wrong person that says the wrong thing, it's a really weird world right now. So for us, I've just got to sort of literally stay out of it. There's no value. The opportunity cost is huge, to say the least, if we were to do this wrong. So no interest. So I'll pretend I didn't get that question asked to me. Next question. Just kidding.
Got it. Fair enough. Michael?
Well,
statement, you pass.
I'm not going to pass, but I'm going to instead throw it back to the panel. Phil and Lacey were talking about kind of some approaches. So let's put some pants on it. Let's give real concrete examples. right? For an agency and a brand interacting with an agency. And let me just tee it up a little bit, okay? Because politics are all over it, and whether you decide to be in it or not in it. So Nike puts out the Colin Kaepernick ad. That's about as political as it gets. They were praised for it. And let's say that your client, Lacey, is and this is going to sound controversial, but you know what? I don't care. Your agency has a client that's a Southwest regional farm equipment company.
Mm-hmm.
So we can guess what the demographic looks like. And you say, hey, company, let's take all your ad dollars and put out a Colin Kaepernick ad.
I guess for one, it's kind of, for me, that wouldn't be my client, because I'm looking for a different type of client customer that I'm more attracted to. So for one, that would not be my client that I would work with. However, me telling that client to put out an ad like Nike is all about sports, athletics, those type of things. So that made more sense for them to gravitate and choose that side for them to do that. Whereas the farming side of it, they're not going to choose to do something along those lines that's going to hit hard and be something that is attractive and be connected to sports. So we're talking about two different, games there. So that's kind of hard to kind of compare those two and what you choose for one to do versus the other.
But I guess, that's fair enough. I guess where I'm going is, so I'll get political. I support wholeheartedly Black Lives Matter in the movement. Okay. And I've seen lots of companies, as we have, go so far as to change their company profile picture in support of that, which meant every single one of them either has an agency that recommended they do it or they did it internally, but they all have agencies. Every brand out there pretty much has an agency for some portion of their marketing work. Procter & Gamble is one of the few that has a lot of it in-house, and they still have 100 agencies. That's a decision right there, which kind of spoke a little bit to Phil and what he was saying with his with values, and Lacey, what you were saying with values. And I think every agency out there is knee deep in having to make those political judgment calls, which at least I think we can say it's really hairy. It's a really messy situation. You may have to put your own agency's values on the line and say, this is what we stand for. And I don't know. I think it's affecting a lot of people on which direction to take, and hopefully they do the right thing.
Yeah. And so just speaking to that, it kind of goes back to the first thought that I said. You're talking about the two different lines. You're talking about politics and you're talking about human rights. And so when you think about the Black Lives Matter movement, it's more on the human rights side. You know what I mean?
No,
and so
you're speaking truth, but the world thinks it's political.
And that's the sad part about going back to the Colin Kaepernick situation. They kept looking at it as something as being more political and him not respecting the flag when it was basically all about human rights. But no one was actually hearing that. I think they started to hear it now with what the NBA did, shutting everything down. They're starting to kind of hear that. And it's sad that Colin is still not getting the praise that he needs and almost the income back that he lost through all of that. But, people are starting to see that it's more human rights than it is political. And I think more people need to kind of hear that. So to me, more brands could get behind that and speak more to that and get in the forefront of human rights.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate all the perspectives. And I'll just wrap up by saying that, I've put my opinion out. And as a consultancy, it's been interesting to see that sometimes people across the aisle from you respect that you put out your point of view. And I've gotten a lot of work where some companies have asked me to help them, right? So I've clearly stated where I stand. And they're like, hey, I get it. We traditionally are probably on the other side of the political aisle, but at the same time, we need people like you to help us. So just really being open, I think, is really important. So with the few minutes we have left, I'm going to circle back to kind of closing statements, because technically this is all about the future of marketing. Yeah. So I'll start, and I would love to, I do think the future of marketing does include corporate values, external communications, I think every CSR, I think everything is really important, and we've seen all of those trends. But, personally, I'll start, and if we can go around the group to kind of have our closing statements and then take any open questions, I think that would wrap up this session for us. But I see the future of marketing as being, specifically from the agency and integrated marketing side, just clear communication, being able to be nimble and pivot when things change, being flexible. And then I do think that it's a new reality where, especially from a service-oriented business, you do need to kind of take a stand and say like, hey, this is what I stand for. This is what I think is important to me, and align with where your values are and where your clients are. I think that's I personally think that's the future of marketing, alignment. I don't think it's just, a paid campaign anymore. I don't think it's just a click of a button. I don't think it's a big agency that could just take everything and, run with it. I think there's a lot of customization, agility, flexibility, and being open to being human beings. I think that's where values all come into play. So would anyone like to start with their closing future marketing vision?
I guess I'll start. I mean, to me, I'm just gonna make it simple. I think it's storytelling. And with storytelling, it's bringing your customers along on the journey with you. And so I think that that's the future of marketing, is being able to tell a story, and therefore you pull at people's heartstrings. That you show the empathetic side of you, and you really pull at their heartstrings and tell a story, and then you just take them along on that journey with them, and you have them. I think who doesn't love a great story?
I agree.
Well, Lacey spoke to the top of the funnel. I'll speak to the bottom. And I'm not going to say the word new normal. I know I just said it. I don't know what the new normal is, but I do know this, that I personally, I bet you everybody on this panel, all 80 people, we couldn't get to 100 in the room, acquire knowledge and products differently right now than they did in January. If it's a little bit different or a lot different in some cases, everything is different right now. And as you know, since we have customers that are agencies, I get to see all the little marketing stuff that every single agency is doing. And some of them seem like it's January. Others are marketing because something's changed and their customers are acting differently. And, nobody's showrooming in Best Buy anymore, right? So what are they doing instead? I don't know. But the point is, think about the bottom part of the funnel. It may go back to normal, or it may never go back to normal. But I can tell you it's different in August than it was a year ago. So your marketing should probably at least try and take that into account.
I'll have to agree there.
Yeah, I can jump in. A couple things on what was said as well as the fact that, things have changed. This was a time when actual product preferences took the back seat a little bit. Just because if you look at groceries, a lot of things that you wanted weren't available because supply chains disrupted that. So people tried new things. Some things they liked, some things they didn't. Some of the experiences are new on how things are delivered. I think the biggest cue is it better? People are going to look at on how things are delivered. More digital is going on right now. Some of the things are better, and they're like, yes, I like that. I want that change. Some of the product choices that people are exposed to is like, wow, I'll probably be a little bit more open to change things and try new things that maybe that they might have been set in the pattern. So it all comes down to companies really knowing how to engage their customer, knowing their customer, and trying to make sure that every time they reach them, it's highly personalized. The goal needs to be knowing where they're at, what they're experiencing, and it's that outcome. How do I deliver a remarkable experience with an individualized outcome for that person and understand where they're coming from and having a focus to do that?
Yeah, the only thing I would probably add would be more on the actual tech platforms and devices and whatever that people can actually use, meaning moving forward, I think everybody needs to be a pro at how to use their phone to the best of their advantage. And I think a lot of people, because they're now going to be working from home, are going to have to step up and understand how to use things, like Photoshop or a Canva and how to put these things together and the different file types. And a lot of this stuff is a much different animal. I'll drop I'll drop this video I put together. So I did this video, what I call this hype reel for Brand Army, and I did it all on this app called Videoly. So this video, if you take a look at it, I think it's badass because of course I did it. But at the end of the day, this literally for $7.99, I made this video. that's the payment per month. And of course, you've got to buy the actual Getty images stuff. But at the end of the day, that video would typically cost you likely thousands of dollars to outsource it. But I had to figure out, because again, with the environment going on, that literally, how do I edit this just from a phone? The video that I dropped, I just edited from my phone. And it's, in other words, a very robust platform where I had to rethink, what am I going to do to get this video? But in other words, I couldn't outsource a lot of this stuff because of the environment being so weird. It's just, where are they going to shoot the content? Who are they going to get involved to shoot it? Like, all that crap went out the window. So I had to then figure it out myself. And so that's literally what I did, meaning you're going to have to start go join Lynda.com, learn how to use these platforms, learn how to use, again, the bigger ones that you're going to need to use from time to time. And I think it's going to help a lot. If not, guys, you're not screwed, but you're going to be at a massive disadvantage, because if you think like me, I need to move fast and I need to get stuff done, and I can't wait. It's not even a thing. I've got to move, and I just got to figure it out. So the fact that I could actually get that video produced end to end just blew me away. $8 a month for the damn Lisa. It's called Video Leap, is the name of it. But the point is I think everybody's going to have to just get a lot better with technology and how to leverage it to their advantage. Period. I think that's what the future of marketing is going to look like for quite a few people. Again, if you're coming in as a solo entrepreneur, or ones or twos kind of people, a lot of this stuff that we're talking about with all of these, it's more of corporate talk, and it's fine, but not really my thing. I'm more interested if I'm this one guy or two people, how do I get my message out? How do I do it on a lean basis? And what can I do right now that's actually going to work? And I think that's at the end of the day, where everything's going to change. Leverage technology, do it in a lean way, iterate, figure it out. But that's kind of where it has to go. Or you're going to need great budget to outsource all this crap. It's tough.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So we have some great questions coming into the mix. You talked about your app, and I see the first question is, what's next after social media? I think that's a super interesting one. I still remember listening to the CEO of Ericsson at a talk, and he brought to mind that the 4G revolution created the app environment. So I don't know about y'all. I could barely remember the time when I didn't use an app for everything. And Ramon just talked about that. And I realized that technology, that 4G, enabled us, that's on our phone, right? So with 5G coming up and, with social media the way that it is right now, do y'all have any predictions for the future? What's next?
I think some of the big things that people are working on, like voice is one, specific to biomarkers that are associated with invoice. At Carnegie Mellon's done a lot of studies within this. They've got great researchers specifically to pick up things based on your voice itself, on your health. There's 26 different things that they've been able to predetermine that based on how you're talking, we might need to schedule an appointment. So you see all these devices that are being, around your house collecting information. While they're doing it, it doesn't take a lot of information to start creating these different patterns. You can read 22 sentences, one paragraph, and have a very good marker on someone to get a good baseline to start understanding these different things. I mean, to the point of, are you impaired? Are you drunk? Are you, are you on drugs? That these devices can actually pick these things up with high propensity, which also means from an ethical standpoint, if a device is knowing that you're impaired, how do you market or not market to people within those stages? But being aware of certain things like that from a voice standpoint, I think is going to propel a lot of different things into just different channels, and using those channels effectively and actually reaching out based on just normal conversations to provide services.
Phil, do I hear you right? You're saying you want to use level of sobriety as a targeting filter? I think that's what you said.
I am saying it that from an ethical standpoint,
okay.
I'm concerned about those guys.
I want 18 to 24-year-old males in the Southeast who are drunk. Okay. Got it.
Specifically worried about those things as we predict.
Oh, cool. Does anyone else have anything to say? Does anyone see podcasts as part of the future? I'm just kind of reading through some of these.
I think they
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
they asked about podcasts fitting into the marketing mix. I mean, podcast is easy. It's an easy way to get your thoughts out, and people, being able to just listen without having to be in tune and watching a computer for YouTube, or if they're, we're not in cars anymore. So, but you're just around the house cleaning or whatever. So I think if you can figure out how to fit podcasts into your marketing mix, I would say go for it. Another way to do it, if you're not wanting to create your own podcast, I mean, pitch yourself to be on other people's platforms, because that then puts you in front of other markets. So that's another way you can add that in if it's you not creating that for yourself.
Yeah, and I would just add in on the podcast. I would only do it if you love it. If you love to talk, or love to hear yourself talk, or you think other people love to hear your voice, then do it. But if you don't love it, I don't know if I would actually even get involved, because it's kind of a forever thing, whether it's once a month, twice a month, and it's quite a bit of work to not just create the content, but also then put it all together, render it, and then push it out to wherever you're going to have to push it out to. So there's a lot of time that you're going to have to think through end to end, and that's actually, I think, brutal. So like we're actually going to be doing a podcast for Brand Army after we open, and we're looking to interview some of the high level influencers that come to the platform, just as a good way to not just get an understanding of what they're up to, but also sort of deepen that relationship, if you will, and of course give them content and us content that we can all share. And my assistant, who's actually over here, right here, she's actually going to be the one, thank God, leading that. Now I can talk literally. I tell people I'm Chatty Cathy's long lost brother. That's true, but I won't have the time to literally put through to do all of that. So if you've got the time, Lisa, it's a tremendous amount of time commitment, more so than you probably realize. Even if you did 1 hour a month, if you've got the wherewithal of the team, go for it. But if you don't love it, find something else.
I think that makes sense. Not everyone is cut out to be a podcaster, so I agree there. We are at time. Kendall just popped on.
Kendall comes out of the
Yeah, I popped on. Any last questions or thoughts from any of the panelists that you want to cover before hopping out?
Oh, I want to cover
other than Ramon. You have shared all your thoughts, Ramon.
No, I've got so much thoughts. So just a real quick thing. This was funny. Like, it's a long story, but just a quick thing that you can use if you're interested. So we use the Adobe Cloud Suite, right? So you've got all the Adobe Cloud products. Anyway, I ended up accidentally having 2 accounts, and I needed to go cancel one. This literally happened last week. So I go to cancel it, and as soon as I go to cancel, they say, "Hey, do you want this offer?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's better." So instead of being able to cancel that one, I was going to keep that one. So now I was going to cancel this one. So then I went to cancel this other one, and they gave me this other offer. I was like, "Oh shit, that's even better." So I went to cancel that one, and then I was going to cancel this one. So I go back to cancel this one, an even better offer. Anyway, out of all of these whatever cancellations, guys, I ended up with 2 months free and $29.99 a month for the Adobe Cloud Suite. And if you know how much it really costs, it's $52.99. So go in if you want, not saying you should cancel, but if you want to cancel and save some money, it's a nice little hack that I just literally discovered last week. Crazy, but
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ramon. Anybody else? Awesome. Well,
I just want to thank the group. Appreciate the conversation.
Thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you to everyone for watching. We have had great numbers today, which means that, as we thought, marketing is a hot topic for entrepreneurs, and we really appreciate all of you sharing your day with us, and to the panelists, all of you guys sharing your time. We will be back tomorrow for 3 more sessions. We have a video marketing session with some video production companies in Dallas to talk about how to create content with your iPhone or with heavier video production software, what the levels of content creation are. We have a Capital One special feature with a member of their marketing team who is going to talk about neatly creating your ideal customer and how you market to them. And then we are going to close off the day with everybody's favorite topic, which is social media marketing. Do you need a TikTok? How do I stay on top of the game? and how do I leverage it in an authentic, unique way, especially with some of the human rights and the upcoming political campaign. So it's a hot year for social media marketing. And tonight there are going to be panels on the main stage. So feel free to jump in. I do not have my list in front of me, but I want to say that tonight is the keynote with Nastia Lukin and Darren Woodson. So if you have time, join us over there. And we appreciate you guys, and we will see y'all tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
We know Ramon.
I know. Like, it's hilarious. Like, I literally have too many. It's funny. Funny.